up, guys? This is a very special episode of the whole podcast KC, hosted by myself, Creed Buck, and the adaptive sports director, Kate Wong. And on this episode, we have a very special guest in studio with us today. Please welcome Mike Murphy.
Yes, I've known Mike Murphy for about a year now. We met at the Adaptive Training Foundation down in Dallas, Texas. And ever since I've known Mike, he just continues to blow me away with his story and all the amazing things that he's able to accomplish and overcome.
Michael, so before the ad break, you were about to talk about your track and field nationals. Can we pick back up on that?
Yes, sir. So it was actually a track cycling national championship. It's kind of a funny story how that led into how it all happened. So it's kind of fun. My roots go back to Ride the Rockies. I was not able to, our team didn't go for some reason, Fort Carson. Everybody had different issues going on. So I was kind of bummed I didn't get to do Ride the Rockies last year. However, the previous year, I was a guest speaker. And so midway through Ride the Rockies, we broke off, and I met a couple pretty amazing people, Doug Campbell being one of them, and the Davis Finney Foundation. So they're a huge sponsor, and they had their team there. So he introduced me to the guy by the name of John Walsh. So going back to my track cycling national championship, it's just funny how the world works. So go back to Ride the Rockies last year. Like I said, that was the event that kind of got me rolling, cycling world and everything. So I was pretty excited about it. The route was actually going through Estes Park. It's one of mine and my pilot Mark's dream routes to go through. However, unfortunate circumstances, it just didn't work out. Fort Carson's team fell apart. Certain individuals, we couldn't make it happen. So I wasn't supposed to ride the Rockies.
Now, you're still within your military foundation or group at this point?
Correct. So I was retired at the time. So this was 2023. So I'd been retired for 3 years. However, living in Colorado Springs, I was very blessed knowing Mark Catapan. I was still plugged into the Fort Carson unit. So I think it's kind of one of those things that once you're in, you're kind of always in. So I would go back, and my main thing is try and motivate other soldiers to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just opened opportunities. Anytime they would have an extra slot for alumni, I would able to go and participate with them.
Nice.
So, and then Mark was one of my primary pilots, so he'd always invite me for X, Y, and Z events. And Ride the Rockies was kind of our ride that we did. So Fort Carson normally forms a team. We go out there, we do Ride the Rockies. It's a huge event, and I even had a buddy who that was like before I even knew about cycling, like I just jumped on a bike and did it. But this guy, he literally requested the Fort Carson recovery unit because he heard that we did Ride the Rockies every year. That was one of his dream things. And that's ultimately what helped him get back on his feet post injury. And so it's kind of cool how the world works around. And we were planning, obviously every year, same time frame, it comes up, and we were getting ready to do it. Team fell through. I wasn't going to do Ride the Rockies this year. So I was pretty bummed. I had other events that I was training for, kind of planning. And the year prior, they had asked if I can speak for kind of just give my story about Ride the Rockies, how cycling's impacted me. And I was like, of course, I love trying to get people involved and just helping out. And so I went and spoke. I met some pretty awesome individuals. One guy by the name of Doug Campbell and his amazing wife. And then he introduced me to the Davis Finney Foundation and a guy by the name of John Walsh. So they were doing the ride. I was actually working with my coach from ATF, the Adaptive Training Foundation. His name's Edwin, and he was doing a ride on his hand cycle. So this guy's a beast. He rode from Dallas to Denver, and he was doing a trek on his hand cycle and trying to raise money for his funds. It kind of just worked out that I didn't do Ride the Rockies. I was able to get his last 2 or 3 days. There was like 100+ miles we did in Colorado Springs, and he ended at Shills. They were the big sponsor. So my goal was, okay, Ride the Rockies isn't happening. I'm going to come here and work out with these guys. And so I was able to gather together. I had my tandem ready. We had indoor bikes, just depending on weather and everything. And he needed a certain amount of miles. So it worked out. Edwin made it to Colorado. We were finishing those last couple days. It was a crazy rainstorm. So we knocked out the last 69 miles at 24-hour fitness. And then during that time frame, I got a phone call from Doug Campbell, the guy that I met the previous year. And he's like, hey, do you want to do Ride the Rockies? John Walsh had just recently been married. He was doing a honeymoon ride. Him and his wife were riding in tandem. And the last day was 91 miles from Black Hawk, Colorado, over to Fort Collins. You go through some pretty cool passes. He's like, he needs a stoker. His wife doesn't want to do it. So I was like, hell yeah. He's like, can you get to Black Hawk? And of course, God works in mysterious ways. Edwin and his crew, after they finished their amazing journey, they were going over to Black Hawk. They had a couple buddies that have a bunch of land, and they were just going to go and enjoy. So Black Hawk's a small casino. It's like Vegas in the middle of Colorado.
Now, were they
And
biking there or flying there?
so they ended up, once they finished biking, they ended up jumping in their little bang bus. He had his Ed Strong Foundation, so he had his van that was his support vehicle the entire route. So he was biking, him and Keith Murphy, another adaptive athlete. They had hand cycles, and they were biking the whole way from Dallas to Denver or to Colorado Springs, and they had their van following behind with support.
A safety Vic.
Exactly. And so they allowed me. I was like, "Do you guys mind? Can I go get a ride with you guys?" And they were like, "Of course, come with us." So it's kind of cool. I'd never been to Black Hawk before. Went and jumped on, stayed in Black Hawk a night with them. And then I jumped on the train at the end, and John and I actually got to ride the last day together. And we had met the year before. He told me about track cycling. He's like, you need to get in the track, go meet Sarah Hammer. She's this world-renowned cyclist, and she runs the velodrome in Colorado Springs. It's at the Olympic Training Center. And I was blessed. I did a camp at the Olympic Training Center the year prior through USABA, United Sports Association for Blind Athletes. And it was, unfortunately, it was kind of post-COVID, so we got one day on the track. So, like, I got a taste of the track. However, I didn't get that full bite because it wasn't, like, we did more outdoor rides. So I still kind of had that feed for road cycling. And John was just all about track cycling. And I was like, it's cool, but I only had like a couple hours on the track. It wasn't anything super exciting for me. And as we're riding, obviously 90 miles, we have a whole lot of time to talk. He's telling me his story. This guy's a legend in the cycling world. He's just super amazing human being, just kind of like all these other people that I've met as guides. I just jump on the back with him and we're bombing down Left-Hand Canyon, going 60 plus miles an hour. It was amazing. And he asked me, are you going to go to track nationals? And I was like, I didn't plan on it. I was training for road nationals and then essentially the inaugural gravel nationals that year. And that was like my first real year of getting serious into cycling. All my other rides, like Ride the Rockies, they were more, I guess not leisure rides, but they were more challenge rides. And last year was my first year fully committing to being a cyclist. And I had other goals, and he's like, yeah, come. I was like, I don't have a pilot or a cycle or a bike. And he's like, yeah, you do. Come ride with me. So I was like, okay, I can make that work.
Which
So
I would assume you biking up mountains and hills would make a track cycle event a hell of a lot easier.
it made it made it seem like that. I was like, well, honestly, I got the mentality I can ride anywhere. So I think that's just the training mentality. You train harder than the actual mission is. And so for me, that was the reality of it. I was like, all right, I can do this. And I did the track in Colorado Springs, which is phenomenal. It's an indoor velodrome and it's cement. However, the one in Carson, Colorado, Carson, California. So it's indoor. It's wooden. So it's kind of built. It feels like a half pipe. But the difference is it's a smaller track, so it's got a steeper bank. And they always talked about, oh, the banks are crazy, but you don't really know it until you get on the track. And I heard pilots tell me, oh, the track's where it's at. I didn't necessarily believe it. But after going, me and him, we agreed to race. I flew out to California. We got a couple days warming up on there. And then we went out there and very blessed. We actually ended up winning the 4K pursuit. And that was my first national championship. And I think I didn't know what to expect. I mean, obviously I knew the goal was national championship and then now hopefully get to a world championship and then Paralympics is his ultimate goal. But it was just kind of like those first little baby steps. And it was just like amazing how the journey all happened just from networking. And just going back and meeting people, talking to people, it led me up to that point where I got to be blessed to be on the back of a bike with a local legend. Just the whole story behind it. This guy was in California forever. He was an outstanding athlete. Then he was a coach, and it was his last. He was actually moving because he just got married. So it was kind of cool how it all worked out. It was kind of like a farewell for him for that track. He's got the most miles on that track, and it was super cool being able to not only deliver it for myself, but for him too. He had all of his kid athletes there that watched him, and I don't know. For me, it was a super meaningful event, and then it kind of made me fall in love with the track, and really, that's kind of my journey now. I ended up getting a more permanent pilot. Nothing like John Walsh was phenomenal, um, but he's got his own life and everything he's dealing with. So now I hooked up with Joseph Mata, and now track cycling, at least in the paracycling world, for tandems, that's the main avenue. If you want to get to the Paralympics, that's kind of what they're pushing for. And I didn't know. I thought, okay, I can do road cycling. That's what I'm going to do. So talking to all the coaches, it kind of lined me up for the track now, which we kind of pushed for Paris a little bit. It was a long shot. However, now the big push is LA 2028, and now it's in the track. So it's
So
kind.
I have a question
Yes, ma'am.
for people who either don't know who are watching, and also for me. So Paralympics and para everything has tons of different like denominations and tons of different breakdowns, but for cycling especially, it can be very confusing. So the velodrome that you won your nationals on and the wooden track that you're talking about, you did it 4K. But what is so you're going around in a circle. Do you go by yourself? And what's the purpose? Do you just start at the bottom, or is it like something where it's kind of like a weird oval where you're starting at the top and you circle down to the bottom and you come back up to the top and you circle down at the bottom? And then can you explain what road is then for people? Like what the difference between road, so there's a velodrome, road, and gravel that you do for cycling. And then you all doing them together, or is it a single race by yourself, or how does that work for you?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, those are very good questions. So I'm actually learning myself. Like I said, I just jump on the back of the bike and go. However, so yeah, so there's different disciplines. You've got track cycling, which is indoor velodrome. You've got road cycling, which is outdoor, and then gravel, which they've had gravel cycling forever. Actually, Kansas has one of the biggest events called Unbound Gravel. Um, and so three different disciplines, at least for tandems that they have. And so we'll break it down first for track cycling. The three races they have for tandems are the 1 kilometer pursuit. So, for instance, the track in Carson, California, is 4 laps around is 1 kilometer.
Okay.
And the goal is so with those ones with the time trial, it's you against the clock, and you start at a standing start. They have a stand that you put your bike into, and it holds you up. It's got a countdown. So the cool thing about cycling, especially track cycling, it's all about being in synchronization with your pilot. So that's where like going back to fundamentals. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, and kind of fundamentals is huge, and that's what he preaches. And going back to the basics. So you have to know how to do the countdowns. Anybody can jump on a bike and be as strong as you want, but if you don't know how to work as a team, then you're not going to be able to get it. So those basics, your starts, your standing starts, getting in line, being able to tuck. So that's where it all kind of falls into place. So you have your 1 kilometer, which is just a time trial. You go balls to the wall as fast as you can. And so with the track, obviously, so it's the inside lane at the bottom is the fastest area. Your goal is to stay down there. You can go up, but one, you're not going to be as fast, and you're going to be on that angle. Um, so the whole goal is to stay at the bottom. The 4K pursuit, which is actually my primary race, that's the one that I won the national championship in. It's the pursuit. You go through a qualifying race. Whoever gets the fastest time stacks you up for your championship, and then you are racing against another person. You guys each start on opposite sides of the track, and if you catch the other team, you win. So it's a pursuit. However, if nobody catches each other, the fastest time wins. So that's kind of the whole purpose behind that one. In the same concept, you want to stay on the inside lane down at the bottom. The velodrome, as far as the lanes go, that's more for individual, or I guess the higher banking portion is more for, they have other races that aren't tandems, and I think there may be, I know there's a tandem team pursuit. I have not raced in that, so I don't know too many details on it. However, they have Madison, they have all kinds of crazy stuff to where they'll have a four-person team and individual bikes follow behind each other, and then you'll start up higher, and then as they hit a certain buzzard, you drop in. So then people start like the for drafting purposes. So there's a whole bunch of different things that happen on the track. My main disciplines are the 1K and the 4K, and there's a flying 200 race that tandems can do. I've raced in it once, where you warm up around the top, you get 2 to 3 laps, and then once you get that third lap, it's called flying for a reason. You cross the line and you drop in, and that's where the pilot has to come in handy. They have to know what they're doing. So you go flying in, you hit the bottom, and you just go as fast as you can for 200 meters. So essentially a lap.
Oh, dang.
So that's track cycling. With road cycling, as far as tandem goes, obviously there's hand cyclists. There's other disciplines in the para world. But for tandem cycling, you have your road time trial, which is a minimum of 15 kilometers. And that one is just you against the clock. And then you have a road race, which with last year's road race, I think was 60 kilometers. Ended up taking silver, didn't do so well. Just mainly, ultimately, it was my fault. I don't know much about bikes. Showed up with a gravel bike to a road racing bike and had the wrong gears. Um, However, that one is just like a regular road race. You would have multiple bikes. There's a certain distance, and depending on the course, you would just go and race whoever finishes first, or essentially the fastest time. But in a group race, it's a first place finisher, and it's a much longer distance. And then gravel cycling so far. So last year was the inaugural national championships. They've had gravel around forever. Like I brought up earlier, Unbound Gravel is pretty much the Super Bowl of gravel cycling, which you actually were able to go with me last year. Unfortunately, I only knocked 32 miles out because our derailleur busted. But we so that one, there's multiple um, disciplines. So on Unbound, you have the 25, the 50, the 100, and the 200. But for national championships, it just depends on your discipline. So last year for tandems, our distance, I believe, was 136 miles. So all tandems race the same distance. So depending on your classification, you'll have a certain distance. It's one big race. You all start together. Whoever finishes first wins. So it was pretty cool last year for gravel national championships. It was the first one ever. And we've got so myself and Joseph Mata, we raced against two pretty big legends in the gravel world. Local legend, Timothy Hornick. He's a big one that gets us into. Also a blinded veteran. He gets us into the Unbound races over here. So he was the stoker, and then Greg Miller, who I met through a bunch of different avenues, but primarily he's the Team Army's head coach now for Warrior Games, and he's a phenomenal pro cyclist back in the day and just great human being. So they were the team we raced up against. So the first, I'd say, about 100 miles, we just kind of raced together, and we used each other, talked the whole time. So that's where I think gravel cycling is a little different. It's definitely competitive, but there's a lot more camaraderie involved. Whereas road and track, it's like shorter distances. So it's, hey, let's race, and then we can BS afterwards. So those are like the main three disciplines that I race in.
Cool.
So, throughout your entire time of cycling and adaptive sports, have you encountered any misconceptions about adaptive athletes or adaptive sports? I know you said right before you got heavy into the adapting world, you got put into a specific platoon in the Army where the shitbag soldiers tend to go. But outside of that, within the civilian realm, have you encountered any misconceptions?
I don't know about from my perspective, but I think from the biggest thing that you run into, or that I've encountered, is a lot of people look at adaptive athletes or people with impairments differently. I think that's just the world. And a lot of it is advocacy. A lot of people don't know. I was naive beforehand. I didn't realize all the different things that were out there. So a lot of people, the minute I say I'm blind, you start getting treated different. They start talking louder and slower, and obviously sometimes I take it at fault, and I get angry about it. But in reality, people don't know. Some people don't know what a white cane is, and And I think I've kind of more so shifted that idea to educating people and letting them know, like, I've got buddies with no arms, legs, there's so many different disabilities that are monsters. They're out there crushing it. And I think, like, obviously going to these games has helped, but one of my biggest um, adventures was going to the Adaptive Training Foundation where Kate and I met, and just being around. It was a full gym. I did a little bit of CrossFit before going there, but being in gym with adaptive athletes. One of the head coaches there is double amputee, and he's one of the biggest monsters I've ever met. He can do anything in a gym, and it's just so powerful. Like, yeah, I've got visual impairments, but I think being around other athletes like that are just striving to do better and seeing other people push is kind of what keeps me going. And it helps break those barriers because people don't know. So I think from, I guess your question's sake is, I've ran into just onesies and twosies of people kind of like questioning it. Oh, a lot of times I've got a vest when I go snowboarding. And they're like, "Blind snowboarding? What do you mean? How do you snowboard blind?" And I'm like this. This is how I snowboard. I just mess with people because in reality, I can get angry and be like, "What do you mean? I've got a guy. He explains to me, and then once you break it down and explain it, then it's like, oh wow, that's amazing." So, I think kind of getting over that pride and the anger, and just more so being friendly about it. I've learned to joke and laugh about things as opposed to just being angry all the time.
Right. So then, kind of to piggyback off of that question, you said pride was a big issue you had to face down. So, was there really any other challenges you had to face down or overcome when transitioning to adaptive sports then?
I think, I mean, kind of tapped on it a little earlier. I think the biggest thing sports helped me overcome pride, overcome blindness, overcome just a lot of different things that I didn't realize were there. Like, I knew they were there. I knew I had certain issues, but it was just that therapy I needed. Like I said, with being a blind athlete, I always require a guide. So I think kind of pride, but more so trust. I had a hard time trusting certain individuals. Even, I mean, I kind of tapped on before. I had a family for a short time after I lost my sight, and they were a huge role in kind of getting me on my feet again. And um, we'd go hiking, and I've been running mountains all the time, hiking the incline, and now I couldn't see the step. So coming down like a rock, that I knew it was a foot. Like, I know the distance, but I was so damn terrified to take that step, and I had to trust these little girls to tell me, "Hey, just take the step. It's
Mm.
only a foot, I promise." And I'm over there reaching around, not trusting people. I'd have to go and feel it, and then I would do it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, it really was a foot." So I think that that barrier of trusting people is what really helped. And I still personally struggle sometimes with trusting people, but I think sports really just helped me overcome that, especially being on the back of a tandem. And it's just like, yeah, you've got to trust the equipment, but in reality, this guy in front of you is not only riding a bike, he's controlling your life. Like, you can smash into a car, you can jump off a cliff, you can hit a speed bump, and you guys are both screwed. Like, there's been scenarios on accident where the pilot will duck, not tell me, and there's a tree branch. So it's like there's so many different things you don't even think about just on a daily basis, that even getting guided. Like, I've I've got a little bit of sight, so I'll guide some of my blind friends that are lights out blind or fully blind, and sometimes I mess up, and it's like I got to make sure that you're on cue with certain things. So I think biggest obstacle, pride and trust, and I think that's where having that little bit of a spacer kind of really helped.
So even with your disability, you would say overall, just finding your niche in sports has definitely helped you overcome and physically and emotionally has helped you become a better person.
Oh, 100%. I mean, adaptive sports open up so many doors and opportunities. Just from, I mean, the competitions are huge, but even like Invictus and Warrior games, the competition is there, but the whole concept behind it is that family and camaraderie value. So being able to meet people, like, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have sports, because that's where Kate and I met. And little did I know, like, we're best friends now, and you just meet so many amazing different individuals that have been through life in different ways. So I think the sports is what played a role in it, but then it set up that connection to kind of help get past certain barriers.
Right. So you've mentioned the Invictus Sports or Invictus competition a few times. So I want to touch on that a little bit and what exactly led you to that and what you competed with in that competition.
Yeah, so Invictus Games kind of touched on the story before. I was training for Warrior Games, and COVID kind of put a halt to a lot of that. And I knew the next goal was post Warrior Games was Invictus Games. Heard about it before, like obviously I knew the channel Warrior Games, Invictus, and then hopefully Paralympics. And I just knew Prince Harry put it on as an international contest. And once I ended up getting, so really what got my name out there was, this is where another thing, going back to saying yes and doing things makes a heck of a difference. So the year that they canceled Warrior Games, they knew, like, there was a lot of different events that happened. Um, the same year we pulled out of Afghanistan, and so there was a lot of, like, you got the whole military crew, a lot of these injured guys that were involved in it, and they had this competition as hope. And now you cancel this competition again when really COVID was pretty much over, but they were just being super cautious. And so it was one of those barriers that I was ready to just give up on in Warrior Games. I was going to just completely go a different route, whether it was adaptive CrossFit or something. I kind of was at the realm of giving up on it. And then they offered a virtual adaptive Warrior Games. I don't remember the exact name, but it was basically Warrior Games, just virtual. And I had done a crap load of virtual competitions throughout the last year and a half. So I was like, okay, hell yeah, I'll do it. And so they did. It was pretty awesome. They still, when you go there, you're sponsored by Under Armour, so they send you all kinds of Team Army gear, and so it was pretty cool. We got all the gear. We had team practices online, and you still kind of got that sense of camaraderie there. And it was kind of crazy because I had to. So it was all virtual, and I kind of had, so my buddy Mark was running the program, but I didn't really have a whole lot of people. Me and him did our cycling contest on Fort Carson. So you had to submit, if you can do it live, you're there to do it live. But you had to submit all of your activities online if you weren't live. So I was planning on doing track, field, swimming, cycling, and archery. However, with the way things lined up, um, so I guess I did do that for the Warrior Games. So those are the ones that I submitted for the virtual contest.
So to touch on how do you do a adaptive competition virtually?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the cycling, it was just tandem. You jumped on Strava, and we had to just record our times and then submit it. So that one was all through there, unless you're at a facility. So normally they'll have, so each recovery unit would have a coach. They'd have cameras set up, they'd have timers and everything. So for the swim, we were actually live, and they had it to where we had a couple other volunteers show up. They put us on Zoom, and then they would kind of we would each unit would show their units live, or if not, you would record yourself and submit the time so that the coaches can actually verify your times. So a lot of it was more so recordings. The live was a little mess, and I think my most interesting live races were track. So I didn't, just the way it lined up. I guess it was more planning on my part. I planned it all. Didn't The whole pride thing kind of kicked in. I didn't ask for help, so I just figured I can show up to any high school, go to a track, and I can run. Forget it's the middle of the day. People were in school. I had my ex drop me off. I go to the track, and I was running without a guide at the time. So I was like, I know, as long as there's nothing on the track, I'm going to be fine. So I go out there, and they need you to have one phone recording, and then the other phone has to record your time. And then they also wanted you to record it on the finish line so that you weren't cheating. I was like, how the heck is this going to work out? So it was kind of crazy. I had two phones in my hand. This is why I got slower times. However, so like, and it was all live. They're like, all right, get ready, get set. So I had one phone, and then I would sit there, hey Siri, start time. And then the other one was a live Zoom so they can see everything. So then I ran on the track and I did all the events in track. I did the 100, 200, 400, 800, and a mile. And I was out there by myself. And then all of a sudden, like I had my cane with me, but I wasn't racing with my cane. I was just racing on the track.
Michael.
So then people start coming out and all these kids start coming out. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot this is a high school. Am
As
I
you're
gonna
just
am I gonna get
trucking
in
little
trouble?
kids over.
Oh my God,
So it was
Michael.
quite interesting, and I think like I mean having those stories because everybody's live and they can all see it. The coach, the commentator slash coach that was in charge of it she was awesome, super crazy personality, and she was just like, "Oh man, this guy's out here on a track all by himself, blind doing it." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you got to figure it out, adapt and destroy." And so it just kind of those couple recordings is honestly what opened the door to where my name got out there to get invited to Invictus over Warrior Games just based on all the events that happened. So it was kind of cool how that how it all lined up. Just going back
Look at this
to
guy. He's
saying yes.
clueless. We need to help this brother out.
They're like, turn left, not right. What are you doing?
Stop here.
It was pretty intense.
We need to get this brother a guide. Come on. Give this brother a chance. He needs to meet Prince Harry.
But it ended up so leading into Invictus, that's kind of where so I got the phone call. So Mavericks, my guide dog, I was running actually I was going to Lifetime Fitness. Got the phone call, do you want to come to Invictus Games? And I was like, oh, hell yeah. And I had like less than a month and a half to get everything done. And because basically it was supposed to be 2020 in The Hague in the Netherlands. It ended up happening in 2022. And a lot of the athletes, due to whatever reasons, the team kind of got cut short. So they needed more athletes, and luckily I was available. So they threw me on the team. We went and did a training camp in Washington, D.C. And then, so with Invictus, what they do is they take athletes from each branch. So from the Warrior Games, they kind of, how they route it. And it was pretty cool from that aspect. That's where my journey is a little different than most. Normally you go Team Army first, kind of get that sense of pride, like Army versus Marines. So you kind of hate everybody and you're just like Army only.
Right.
Whereas in my mind, I went to Team US first. So I was I was like, hell yeah, Team US. It felt like the Paralympics. I haven't been to the Paralympics yet, but like just that whole experience, you get Team USA gear. You get like they deck you out and it's phenomenal when you're there with so many different outstanding athletes, mentors, people that have been there before. The training staff is amazing. So just having that whole recovery team and everything, it was phenomenal. So we ended up going training camp for a week. They flew us out to The Hague. We all flew together. And the cool part of Invictus, I think that I took away, obviously the sports was amazing. So I ended up having to switch it up. So I did track, field, swimming, cycling, and rowing instead of archery. I was training archery, but archery was at the same time as track.
So can you expound a little bit on how someone with a visual impairment does archery?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where I was kind of at a loss because archery is really cool for visual impaired. And that's one of those trust factors again. So I don't use a sight or anything. So basically the way it works is it's indoor archery and they give us way bigger targets than other people. So it's kind of cheating. But we get huge targets. And what happens is I have a guide behind me. Normally somebody that knows how to shoot and they'll have so I went to archery school, the Rockies. It's a Colorado area, and they have a device that's set up. They built for VIs, and on the floor, it's shaped like a capital L, and basically, it's an area so you can remember exactly where to put your feet. So this goes back to all the fundamentals. So you have your feet placement set up, and then the only thing that you can use as a sight is any sort of pointer. So this one they had this L-shaped device. And then picture like a pole that just stands straight up, and then attached to the pole is a clip with a little needle. And whenever I go and fully extend my bow, you kind of go off knuckles. So either ring knuckle, top, bottom. That's kind of my front sight. So I can't rest it on there, but I can touch it for sight memorization.
Mm-hmm.
And then they explain all the fundamentals, breath work, making sure your posture is correct, everything's pulled back, and then it's up to your guide to kind of walk you on target. So it's really interesting. I never shot archery before. Like as a kid, I made BS arrows and stuff, but it was really cool. I started off on recurve and ended up uh, training just recurve and compound. But I like it because archery is extremely therapeutic and it's a whole teamwork aspect. So you sit there, I'll sit there and pull, and the guy's like, all right. In competition, you can only call out where you hit. So it goes based on color. I think center's yellow, black, red, blue. It could be off with the colors, but so you have to memorize that, and then they also tell you direction, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, like clock directions. So then I know where I hit, and then I have to do Kentucky windage and try and fix it. Whereas in practice, they can pretty much tell you exactly, okay, this is where you hit. We're gonna make a minor adjustment, go a little up and to the right. So you kind of get your group work and you figure it out. So for me, even to this day, archery, anytime there's a chance to go and do it, I just love going and shooting. Eventually I'd like to go and hunt with archery. But I think from the blind perspective of shooting archery is a really cool concept because obviously I can't just go out and shoot arrows on my own.
Right.
And that's where that pride and trust factor comes in again, where it's like, all right, let me be patient, and then this guy's gonna help walk me on target. So the competition's cool, and then even with so I didn't compete in that in Invictus games. However, in Warrior games we did, and it was pretty cool. Myself and Jacob Cox, and then Captain Avila, we all three competed. So it was cool. They had three blind guys up there competing and shooting against each other, and honestly, that's one of the best I guess scenes to watch is blind archery. A lot of people get a huge kick out of it because it's kind of the whole encompassing aspect of adaptive sports where yeah, you are competing, you're doing things, but it's a teamwork aspect and it kind of just brings everything together.
I'll put my money on Mike any day on any sport, anything. Well, one of the first nights I met Mike, we went out to a pub and we played darts. And this mofo, he kicked my butt in darts, and I was like, no way. This dude can do anything, anything any sighted person can. So I'll put my money on Mike all day long. We also went shooting at ATF, and the his guy just walked him on sight on target. He shot all sorts of guns and just walked him on sight on all targets, and he was a beast. So
So, for the viewers who don't know what ATF is, do you want to explain exactly what they do?
Yeah, I'll take it.
yeah, you're much eloquent talker than I am.
So ATF is the Adaptive Training Foundation, kind of going back to you said resources. So they help out not only military, but they help out civilians as well. It's a fully adaptive gym in Dallas, Texas. Kate and I signed up for there's a 9-week program called Redefine, and it's for, we went to the military mountains. So our class was strictly military and first responders that were injured. You sign up, it's 9 weeks, and the whole compass is redefine wherever you're at in your journey. It's a very selective process. You fill out an application, and in mine, like my main goal was to go there as a Paralympic athlete, like to become one. Like I was already at a point where I've had the military, had sports, I knew how to work out, but I wanted to like redefine that and kind of hone it in. But it ended up being a lot more than just athletics. I thought I was going to go there and just work out all the time because my thing is I'm very blessed with endurance. I can work out 8 times a day. I'm good, and that just kind of that fulfills me. However, when I got there, it ended up being a lot more than just a gym. It became like community, a family. Like I said, Kate and I are best friends now. You come together. We had 10 athletes in our class, 5 local, 5 from out of state. We all stayed in the same hotel together, so you get the whole family aspect. Um, but in reality, it was the family aspect, but they really make you dive deep into what your why is, kind of your roots of what's going on with you and why are you here, and then kind of redefine that in a purpose. So there's a term called kintsugi that kind of defines like breaking yourself down and rebuilding yourself with gold. And I didn't like the, I guess, pride factor, right? I didn't think like I was like, oh, I'm an adaptive athlete. I'm good. I didn't think that I had the kintsugi factor in me. But in reality, there was a whole lot of other pieces, mental aspect. We do a recharge room before and after each workout. You go in there, you do breath work, we sit there and talk. So it's a closed room. So kind of, everybody talks about different experiences, and luckily it was all military and first responders, so it's all relatable. And you just talk about what demons are hiding behind you, what's going on. So ultimately, it became a place that redefined my whole person, as opposed to just an ad. I thought I was okay. I'm gonna get stronger. Yeah, I mean, I definitely got a lot stronger. I got some amazing coaches there, but mentally and physically, it helped me realize it's okay to be blind. Like, I knew that it was okay in a certain realm, but I still kind of had that chip on my shoulder. But after going there, you're around people with all sorts of disabilities. But it's like these events, and primarily like ATF, I don't feel like I'm blind when I'm there. So it just became a home away from home. And then it's also another network resources. Her and I just finished up a program where we were mentors for new athletes in this program. So it's just one of those things that the more you give, the more you give back type aspects, and it's been an amazing journey. So I mean, highly recommend ATF to any adaptive athlete, whether you're civilian. They even have kids that go there. I mean, they help out the entire community. It's pretty phenomenal.
Nice. And with that, we're going to our second ad break. Stick around.
Perfect.
Life can present challenges, but the whole person believes in turning challenges into triumphs. Our staff is trained to provide compassionate, personalized care that enhances the lives of our consumers, enabling them to live independently and with dignity. The whole person believes in the power of human connection. Our staff extends their reach into vibrant communities, fostering connections and creating moments of joy for every consumer we serve. Whether that's through peer support groups, adaptive sports, employment services, or non-emergency medical transportation, our staff provides exceptional care and become trusted companions and confidants. Your donation will help us continue to expand our programs and services to help people with disabilities remain independent and living in their home. Consider giving a gift today. Thank you.
And welcome back to the whole podcast. So, Mike, we left off with talking about what ATF does and all the outreach programs they have for adaptive athletes, both for civilian, law enforcement, and military. So now let's jump back in and tell us a little bit about winning the Invictus Games.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of where my journey kind of took off and really expanded, was the Invictus Games. Kind of hit on the track race was the first one. Kind of took me back to high school days. Being able to run again was amazing. Um, I think that whole journey was pretty phenomenal, from jumping on all different branches of military, from the training camp to going over. We were pretty blessed. So Team US was actually sponsored Team Ukraine. And obviously, with all the events going on overseas, it was pretty powerful to have them be able to come out of their hell and come and experience adaptive sports with us. So we were able to go to the U.S. Embassy with them, team up, and get pretty close. Um, and I think, kind of like I hit on before, the sports were phenomenal. Winning everything was pretty exciting. But just that camaraderie piece. I was talking with a gentleman on the way to the restroom earlier about my dog Maverick. So he's got patches. So it's kind of a big thing in the military is you wear a patch for your unit. And the big thing in Invictus Games was, once you either finish your competition or whatever, you swap either uniforms, patches, anything like that. So he's a walking testimony. He's got patches from all different units from all over the world. Um, and I think overall, I mean, the winning the gold medal in the running, cycling, and in different events there was phenomenal. But I think the overall takeaway that I got from that was just life. Like, there's so much aspects to it. They have a concept there of a yellow bench. And the goal behind Prince Harry puts these yellow benches out there purposely for you to sit down and talk to somebody else from a different race, different culture, different background. Yeah, we're all NATO. Most of us supported the same mission. But everybody's been injured in different realms, grown up in different realms. So I think, like, that for me was the biggest takeaway. And that's why, so ultimately I'll be going, hopefully in 2025, they're doing the first winter Invictus Games in Canada. So filled out the application, hoping to get it selected. But I think like I said, the sports are amazing, winning, and it kind of just sets that goal. But once you get there and just experience the camaraderie, the value of having that team aspect back is really what is a game changer.
Awesome. Awesome. So I know you have a busy weekend here in KC. So we have one more final question for you. And that is, what are some of your upcoming competitions, aspirations? Where are you looking to build in the next couple of years?
Yes, sir. So I've been very blessed with a lot of different things. So primary sports goals, I guess, ultimate sports goal right now is getting the 2028 Olympics or Paralympics. Myself, I've finally got a solid pilot. So training and kind of aiming towards that. That's the big picture goal. In the meantime, is rack up as many national championships and hopefully World Cups. So this year coming up in July, we have the track cycling national championship. I get to go defend that. And then September's the gravel cycling national championships. So those are two big cycling races. I'll be back in Kansas here at the beginning of June, racing in unbound gravel. So I was 2 years ago. I won the 100-mile race for tandem. Last year, unfortunately, our bike broke, so we didn't get a finish. So goal is to finish this year and then hopefully come out on top. We'll see how that goes. There's quite a bit of good competition there. Um, and then, like I mentioned before, 2025 February is Invictus Games in Canada, and it's the first time they're doing winter sports. So primarily, I'm hoping to bring blind snowboarding to the map. As far as international competition goes, I've been able to compete last year in Breckenridge and in Vermont for blind snowboarding, and then kind of hoping to, if not get it to the Paralympics, at least just let other people know things are possible. So I'll be competing in blind snowboarding, skeleton, swimming, and then indoor rowing at Invictus 25, and then just all out on cycling.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we will definitely keep an eye out for you and be rooting for you in all your upcoming competitions. And unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. Kate, myself, thank you so much for tuning into this special episode. We want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Michael Murphy for coming out and spending this hour and a half with us, just talking about his life story and upcoming events. And with that, that wraps up this week's episode of the whole podcast KC with myself and Kate Wong and our very special guest, Michael Murphy.